an example of attribution, and see, it's attribution, what you attribute it to. This Jewish man had terrible panic attacks, and those of you who have had panic attacks, you know how they are. You think you're dying, and all kinds of things are happening. And he would have to go to the emergency room 4 or 5 times a week. He thought he was having a heart attack. So he goes to a Catholic monastery, and he wanted to learn to meditate, so see if he could get rid of the panic attacks. And all of a sudden, he's meditating, and he begins to depersonalize. The things that happen with panic attacks, you begin to lose selfness and all that. And he calls one of the monks, and he tells the monks what's happening. He says, okay, wait a minute, let me get somebody else. Take me to the emergency room. 3 more monks come in, and they start asking him, how do you do it? And they go, God, we've been trying to do this for years. We can't do it. Teach us how to do it. The moment there was a shift in context, he said, well, I don't know. And all of a sudden, the panic attack goes. Because the attribution was, it's okay. This is a good thing. This is built in. We want to learn about it. It's the same thing with that. That the attribution is, this is abnormal. This is kind of weird. Let's take you to the hospital so they can fix you. As opposed to what you're doing is you're basically depersonalizing. You're going into the unselfing. Depersonalizing, if you go to the DSM-4, is a psychiatric disorder. And mystic is a wonderful thing. But you have to know the difference between a psychotic and a mystic, because there are differences. The psychotic depersonalizes, loses a sense of self, fragments, goes out there, and doesn't know how to get back, so it needs to be brought back psychopharmacologically. They come back worse off with no insights. They thought they were God coming back, and they say, you know what, I was wondering, I thought I was God. Maybe I'm not, but maybe I'm the Virgin Mary, you know. And then you have to give him more medication. The mystic knows how to go in, knows how to go out, and when they come back, they always come back with more compassion. It's a cohesiveness that you're bringing back, not fragmentation. But you have to learn how to de-self or unself and self again. And that's a path.
I think if I might jump in here too, I think that journey with the mystic and the schizophrenic is so delicate that it's at that point you need someone. You cannot do that alone.
You need a guide, yes.
You cannot pursue that spiritual, mystical depth alone. It's simply not possible.
No, that's right. And that's why mystics, the way that I try to differentiate between finding God through religion, and I mean, I'm not saying anything negative about religion, is you're finding God through groups. And what you're doing is, as a group, you're wanting to honor God. Okay? A mystic wants to find God by himself and herself, and they want to know God. Religion needs preaching. Mystics need guides. But it's the same thing. You could take whichever one with a group, or you can go individually. But you need guides because there's a navigational chart that a guide can give you where you are and can move you in and out. So it's extremely important to know that. And if you don't know how to do it, it's very scary. But I think what psychiatry tries to do is to deal with it at the biological level. And unfortunately, psychiatry is becoming more and more biological. And psychology is becoming more and more cognitive, and they're going like this. And that's why it needs to be biocognitive, including the spiritual. Yes, speak more about free will. Again, free will is not programmed. And it's an out-of-order thing, because if it were in order, it could be predicted, and then it wouldn't be free will. So since it's an out-of-order thing, it causes anxiety at the existential level, and it causes despair at the transcendental level. So free will is something that you need to feel anxiety. It's normal to feel anxiety when you make a decision. It's normal to feel a sense of loss of grounding when you act on free will, because you don't have the software to handle that. And you have to have free will within the mode of discovery, not within the mode of prediction or validation. You can't do free will linear. It's very difficult. When you're really doing, when you're making life changes, that's why it's so difficult to make life changes. And with the fear of death, this is what happens with the lamenting that I wanted to talk about. There are 3 things that we do, and you'll see how addictions are so difficult to treat, and obsessions and problems that people get stuck with. You'll see how difficult it is. When I was doing research with phobics, I found that there was always if you go back, you always find the fear of death in every phobia. There's a fear of death in every phobia, whatever it is. But with the work that I've been doing with the lamenting, I think it's really a fear of death, but it's actually disguised, and what it really is lamenting. But what happens with how we deal with death without having the navigational chart is that we say, okay, I'm aware that I'm not going to be here forever. And I'm aware that no matter what I do, I'm going to go. So what I'm going to do, since I have a need for control, is I'm going to deny it, I'm going to defy it, and I'm going to pseudo-control it. Those three things are really important. I'm going to deny it, I'm going to defy it, and pseudo-control it. So, when you deny it, you use an addiction, you use people, use whatever to reduce the anxiety when it starts coming up. Alcohol, sex, gambling. It's a denial. And you deny it with whatever you do, and the obsession or whatever it is will reduce the anxiety. If you drink, it'll reduce the anxiety. If you gamble, it'll reduce the anxiety. Of course, it goes back up again. So you're denying. The second thing that you're doing is you're defying. And you're defying death by saying, okay, I'll show you. I'll show you. I'm going to test my liver, and you become an alcoholic. I'm going to test the strength of my body to take trauma. You become an abused spouse. I'm going to test my lungs for emphysema, and you become a smoker. So you begin to defy, to test. And you notice how smokers will tell you that they're so afraid to stop smoking, and they're so afraid of dying of this or that. I have a friend who has this morbid fear of lung cancer. While he smokes, he tells you. So what he's doing, he's defying death. You defy death when you do that. And then the third is the pseudo-control, because you're saying, I am going to choose how I'm going to die. I'm going to choose emphysema, or I'm going to choose this, or I'm going to choose that. And that process is totally subconscious. It's not a conscious process. So this is why it's so impossible, so difficult to get rid of these kinds of things, because you're addressing the symptoms rather than the cause. Once you begin to learn the lamenting, and once you begin to see that what you're doing is, it has an anxiety-reducing effect, and then you teach anxiety-reducing techniques. It has a defiant effect, so what you do is you teach people, rather than defy, to accept your joy. And it has a controlling or a pseudo-control, because you can't control it. So what you do is, instead of trying to control death, you begin to control your destiny, which is your joy and your abundance. When you make those shifts, all of that begins to change, and in a roundabout way, the lamenting goes down and the fear of death goes down.